My name is Laurens Wapenaar. I am product manager at FinDock, and with me is Klaas Koistra, also product manager at FinDock. And together, we'd like to show you what we've been building for the July release of FinDock. Before we start, this session will be recorded, and the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, where you can also find all the past recordings. Everything we'll be talking about is already available in your sandbox environment and will automatically be pushed to your production environment on Sunday night, the 27th. If you would like to track the status in detail, you can go to status.findock.com and see this release, and all other maintenance updates, but also any hotfixes that we do. You can also subscribe there to any updates. All right, so now it's time for the actual content of the webinar. Today we'll be talking about a couple things. We'll give you some updates on our betas and where we are with them. Then we'll be talking about our enhanced setup. Then a short section about our initiative to do direct debit with our virtual terminal from Salesforce. And then Klaas will highlight a couple small wins and round off the webinar. So let's get started with an update. This is about how the status of all our initiative looks. With this release, the new setup becomes generally available. We still have a couple features in beta, but we do expect, again, in a safe harbor, to move many of these to general availability in September. So on the setup. So we've been on a continuous journey to make FinDock easier to implement. And obviously that journey doesn't start today, but we do believe that we've made a big leap here. Part of the journey, we've been making several product improvements to basically prevent you from having to customize too many things. We've been adding in-app guidance, which is the thing we'll be talking about today with our setup. But we've also created many additional guidance tools like our Academy with courses on almost everything you can do in FinDock. Our knowledge base, we keep continuously updating and changing. And then we've added a whole bunch of tooling, but also example configurations in our FinDock labs. Please make sure to check it out. We continuously add more things. It's also open for partner contributions. So if you have ideas or something you would like to share with the community, FinDock Labs is a great place to do that. So about the setup. The goal for the setup, which we started more than a year ago, was to help users set up FinDock faster and with less friction. We've been doing that by helping you with what configuration is necessary, so knowing what to do, where to find this configuration, so where are these settings that you would need to set, then how to do this configuration, so what do you need to do to get something working, and also how to make sure it keeps working once you've actually set it up once, and then use it in the future. It's generally available with this release, which means it's available to everyone. And we believe we've created something great here. To dive a little bit deeper, I've created some more specific slides here. So one of the big things we did is, where we got a lot of feedback on the old setup, was that the navigation simply wasn't very intuitive. So what we've done is we completely rebuilt that with a left-hand menu, with tabs and sections to group settings more naturally, created deep links so it's easier to share what you're working on or share with us what's not working, and with us to share where you should be able to set that, simply to make it easier for you to find these things. And one of the important things is that we've changed the setup to be more vertically sliced. Now, what do we mean by that? It means that we put all the settings for a certain processor in one place, instead of having a tab for accounts for all processors, a tab for payment methods for all processors, a tab for automated processing for all processors in several different places. We've put all of these settings together. So if you would like to configure Stripe or one of our Nordic packages or SEPA, you can do it all in one place. And also, by doing everything in one place, we mean that you can now do everything from the setup. So before, you would still have to go outside of FinDock to do certain things, like install a new processor or get the processing hub package. But everything can now be done from the FinDock setup. All you need to do is install our core package, and then you can do everything from there. Then on top of that, we've automated a lot of the steps that you would need to do manually before. For this, we've removed some of the redundant steps that used to be necessary, but now doesn't need to be anymore, like the initial site configuration. We've automated a bunch of steps that simply don't need user input. Obviously, if we're going to deploy something or add something sensitive, we're going to still ask for permission. That also means that some of the things we still let you do yourself, like, for instance, assign a permission set group, because we believe like these types of security features you should still do. But everything that's not in that area, we try to automate as much as possible. For instance, we automatically activate processor packages now, where before that was an intermediate step between installation and configuration that everybody just needed to do anyway. We also automatically deploy new configuration for you. You can still do it manually if you want to. And we've changed the tooling and the patterns that we use for that are now simply more secure and also more reliable. Then we've added guidance. So obviously we try to make everything as obvious as possible, but we do know, especially because we're talking about payments here and in combination with Salesforce, some things simply need an explanation. And because these are payment-related things, they are sensitive. So we'd rather make sure you know what you're doing. And we do that by adding inline help for most of the settings that we have. Sometimes adding, like in this screenshot, an additional admonition with additional information to make sure you don't miss anything. But also by having a setup guide that takes you through all of the steps that you need to do to configure FinDock. Now, obviously, this is different for everyone, depending on what processor you use, whether you do bank statements or not, whether you use our online pages or API. These configurations can differ, but we try to at least guide you to the major steps in case you would like to have a little bit of an overview, like what are all the things I need to do. Finally, some things simply don't fit in a Salesforce UI, so we've tried to limit the inline help to keep it as short as possible, and where necessary, we refer to all the many additional guidance that we have, but we try to deep link you so you don't need to go look for them yourself. Then error prevention, one of the big things we got a lot of feedback on, is we try to make sure that once you've configured something, so you pressed all the buttons, that the state of the configuration does not lead to system errors. And if they do, we tell you about it in the setup. So we do know that some things get configured once and are good forever, but other things, especially when they rely on Salesforce permissions, on certain users that can be that could, for instance, be disabled, not from the FinDock setup, but out of context in the Salesforce setup, that could lead to issues. And then we try to signal those issues in the setup. For instance, through these kinds of alerts that you see at the top of my screen here. We also try to prevent configuration issues where configuration is data by doing additional validation to make sure it's correct, providing placeholders to show you the structure of the data we expect, all kinds of things, some big, some small, to try to make sure that once you're done, you're actually done and it actually works. Then finally, what we try to do is in certain places where lots of configuration comes together, we've tried to give insights in what your current configuration is. So one place where you see this a lot is, for instance, for a processor. You need to know the status of the processor itself. You need to know, are there targets? How many targets or accounts are there? Are payment methods active? In these places where lots of information comes together, we've tried to create overviews for you. So at a glance, you can see what has been configured in the past, what's the current state, and could there be something that would need to be done without opening every single setup page or tab or underlying card. And then finally, there are simply things that are required. Sometimes this is FinDock Setup, like having the processing package installed. But sometimes it's a specific Salesforce security setting that needs to be enabled to use the setup in this instance. And then we try to signal that early in the journey with, for instance, a card like this. So that's a bit of an overview. That's much more in there. It's been quite a bit of a journey. And with the July release and it going GA, we did a couple things to end this journey. We did bug fixes based on your feedback. We did a whole bunch of UX improvements. We made sure you only need to install one package and one package only and can take it from there, and then install the other packages from the setup. And one important thing I want to call out is that with this release, we have started to deprecate the classic setup. So we do know that many of you have been using the old setup for a very long time, so it's very familiar, but there are certain things in there that we need to start removing, partially because we want everybody to get used to the new experience, but also for security purposes. The old setup was, for instance, written in Visualforce, and we want to move on to a new stack and not maintain two. So with this release, you'll see that the old setup is only partially available, with some features that we will not port because they themselves may be no longer used by many customers. And it also means we are forcing you there. So we need your feedback to make sure that we are not impeding you here. And if we do, find a solution in the new enhanced setup. So if you see anything that you think could be improved, or more importantly, is simply broken, please email either me directly at laurens@findock.com or our CSG department at support@findock.com, and they'll make sure to find me. On to the next topic. So the next topic is around direct debit and a virtual terminal. So what are we talking about here? So in Salesforce, you can take payments directly from a Lightning Web component on a record page. And I'll show you a bit how that looks in context later. And we already had the capability there to take credit card payments. With the last release and this release, we are now also adding the capability to take direct debit payments directly from this component. This is used for when you take payments on the phone, or people send you their details on paper or email or any other non-web form way. And then an agent of your organization can simply type in the details and take the payment. With this release, we've added Stripe direct debit for the US to this component, which is through ACH. And you can do both one-time and recurring payments. It's multi-merchant, fully configurable in the background. And it supports the reuse of stored bank accounts. Now, what does it look like? So on my screen, which I will be sharing, I have an installment layout, but this could be an MPSP opportunity an NPC gift transaction, any of the recurring objects like recurring payment, recurring donation, or gift commitment. The component works on any of them. And on the right-hand side, you see our virtual terminal. It takes the data from the record. So in this case, that's the amount and the currency. It looks at the account or the contact to see if this payer already has some cards on file or bank accounts on file with the new additions, and what the status of the payment is. Now, in this case, the status of the installment is still outstanding, so it still needs to be paid, which means we have a couple options here. We can ask the payer whether they would like to reuse their existing credit card. If we had more cards or bank accounts or whatever on file, they would show up here as well. Or we have the choice to enter a new card and enter the details, or with the new release, and for Stripe, the new bank account details. Let me make this a little bit smaller so the fields are easily viewable. Now, what you see here is the fields that Stripe needs to collect the payment. If we also have this for Authorize.net, they use different fields simply because Authorize.net requires different fields to collect an ACH direct debit payment. This is a choice, obviously, of the payment service provider, but we make sure that we handle this kind of discrepancy. In this case, Stripe wants to know whether this is an individual payment or it's a payment for a company. And then they would like to know the bank account information. So let's take some test data from Stripe. In this case, that's the routing number and a test bank account number, and they also want to take the name on the account. Now, this name needs to be precise, as precisely it is stored with the bank usually, so we can't infer it from the account or contact information, unfortunately, but we can do that with the email. And because we can, we pre-fill it here for you, so your agent doesn't have to do it. They only need to confirm whether that's correct. So once I have all the data here, I can press take payment. If, for instance, I made a mistake here and the bank account number was too short, it would tell me that. Or if I, for instance, didn't have it, it would say complete this field. But let's re-add the correct bank account again and then take the payment. Now what you'll see is we'll go to Stripe here and we will immediately give the agent feedback on whether the payment was successful. If it's not, we will also tell you that. We go to Stripe here, they will then do the processing and they will let us know what the status is. In the background, they tell us what's going on. And you see here the status was updated to pending processing, and we'll also see there's a lost status reason here. Now the reason there is something here and it says payment is awaiting microtransaction confirmation is because Stripe needs the payer to confirm that they own the bank account, which is a requirement for ACH direct debit in the US, and Stripe handles that to microtransactions. That's something that the payer needs to do, and then Stripe will send them an email. So you will simply need to wait for that. But we do tell you that this is going on. So in the case somebody calls or tries to find out why this installment wasn't paid yet, it tells them directly on the layout that the microtransaction process is still going on, and they can either wait or follow up on that with the payer. If something goes wrong with this verification process, Stripe will update us, and we will update the installment and say the payment was failed because of microtransaction reasons. Now that we're in Salesforce, I think it's also good to show you a little bit what the setup looks like in practice, and to show you some of the things we've been talking about previously. So we've talked about the left-hand menu navigation here. So everything you need is right here, whether it's automated processing, its connections with Processing Hub and Web Hub. And you'll also see, for instance, how we split that up. Now, one thing I did to be able to show you a little bit about how we handle these certain things in this environment, I broke the Processing Hub connection on purpose. And since the Processing Hub connections is an important connection, we show a red alert here at the top. I also made a faulty deployment. So I broke the way configuration with picklist is supposed to happen. And you see that again, we show you an alert at the top. We can either retry it, or you can go to the Salesforce, the Salesforce deployment setup deep inside of Salesforce. So an admin will need to do this and find out what's going on here. And so we deep link you there and leverage what Salesforce already has. Other things that are good to point out. So here you see the overview. So I have every single processor in existence, but I can still quickly see which ones are active, how many accounts I have here, which payment methods are active for which processor, or if a processor in this case doesn't have any accounts connected or any active payment methods, I can also see that at a glance. Same thing where we go a layer deeper. So let's take Stripe, which we've been using. We see a summary of the status, the accounts, and the payment methods. And with these tabs, I can navigate to each of these things. One thing that I think is nice to point out here is the processing tab. So this is one of the places where we've made the configuration very vertical. So to make Stripe working, you need the accounts, you need the payment methods. Maybe there are some additional settings. In the case of Stripe, there's not, but there are processes that need you, for instance, to say which brands of credit cards you want to connect. And then you want to automate the recurring collection, which is also done here. So basically, you have everything you need for Stripe in one place. For some of these things like processing, we also provide overviews of all your processors. Now, obviously, since I have all of them, this is a little bit confusing. Usually you would have only a couple here. But let's say you want to change how you automate your collections. You can also do it for one place instead of having to go into each and every processor to find out what's going on. So here's also an overview again of what we're doing. And then including the settings that go for all the processors. So that's what I wanted to show you today. Important to know about our direct debit, specifically the direct debit capabilities for our motor component, is that for now, for credit cards, we have Authorized.net, Stripe, and WorldPay. For direct debit, we have that with ACH for Authorized.net and Stripe, and we'll be expanding that gradually. If you have a use case for this currently or a potential use case, please let us know, and we will consider it for future development. Obviously, it works with all our FinDock managed sources, like Nonprofit Success Pack. If you use FinDock with simply recurring payments or Nonprofit Cloud, and you can extend these components with Salesforce Flow by simply dropping them on a screen flow. So that's it. Now it's on to Klaas, who will be showing you what else we've done this release.
Thanks, Laurens. Before I dive into all the details of the many changes we've made across the board, I'd like to highlight a few major initiatives that have come back over the previous webinars or are newly introduced with this release. And one important one is the fact that last release, we've announced the fact that the classic permission sets that we currently have will become end of life in the November 25 release. What that means is that after that, permission sets will not be updated anymore by FinDock, but they will remain in your orgs. It's very easy to migrate, and we've provided several pieces of guidance for you on how you can do that. So we wrote a small document with steps on how you can migrate to our new permission set groups, with also detailed documentation on what permissions are in there. And if you need any more help, our support team is more than happy to assist you in helping you understand what you need to do in your scenario. It's still a bit away, but I thought it would be good to highlight it again today. It's very easy to perform, so you can just get started right away if you want to. Secondly, we are really excited about that with this release. We have completed our work to make FinDock pages and FinDock pay links accessible for everyone. We've gone through a major initiative of making sure that we are complying to the latest standards, and we've done several things in that front, which I think are very nice to highlight to make sure that everybody who wants to make a payment or make a donation to your organization is able to do so. One major area where we made improvements, which come to all pages, not only new pages, is that we help users identify earlier when something is wrong by showing you if a field is required when you skip it, and give you more guidance on what errors are broken. Secondly, we give you more control over colors and contrast on your page by adding a secondary brand color to make sure that you can set up your pages in a way that they are compliant and also provide enough contrast. Thirdly, we've made a lot of under the hood changes to make sure that people who use assistive technologies like a screen reader or other software, that they have the right context on their page and that they know what they are doing, without you having to think about that. This just comes all out of the box with no additional configuration for you. And finally, this was a major initiative for us now, but this is a continuous improvement for us for any new changes we make on pages and pay links to make sure we stay compliant. And we will also make sure that we are regularly audited to stay on top of the latest requirements that are set out by the standards bodies on this topic. We can't wait for you to get started on this, and if you have any feedback or questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And hope you all like it. Now, the second major initiative which we went through, which took a significant time out of this release, was the fact that we made a change in how we deal with security and permissions within the Salesforce platform in our core package. As we've grown and FinDock has been around for quite a while, we've realized that we want to centralize the way we do queries and database updates in Salesforce. And with this release, we managed to create central services to do so, which implements the latest Salesforce security practices across our core package. These changes are not visible because they should not touch any functionality, but they make it a lot easier for us to stay on top of these latest security patterns and practices by Salesforce, and also make sure that we're more consistent across our package with ensuring that the right permissions are set and used. Finally, as I said, there should be no functional impact, but we have improved our logging on this front as well. So if you run into anything, we show you clearly now what's going wrong, and we can help you with help you find what kind of issues you might be seeing. This has been a major effort, and it would be, we thought it would be good to point out. If you run into anything, please let us know so we can look into it. And finally, we made a lot of other improvements where I want to highlight one in particular for the people who are heavy users of Processing Hub, and specifically Processing Hub Manager. Processing Hub Manager in Salesforce is the way where you can track processes that happen in Processing Hub, like the creation of a file or the extraction of a file. And we've made significant improvements in making sure that you can better understand and also see when something's wrong by adding filters and other improvements to make your life a lot easier to stay on top of the processes that happen there. It's a much requested feature, and we're really happy we can bring it to you right now. There are a lot more features that are on here, and I'd recommend you to look into the release notes, which we've published on our docs. Make sure you switch to the July 25 sandbox version to have all the details, where you can learn more about all the changes that are in this release. That's it for this release. I really want to thank you for staying around and listening to this webinar. We will stick around briefly for questions, so if you have any, feel free to post them in the chat to us and we'll discuss them. And if you've got somewhere else to go, then have a nice day and enjoy your weekend.